Welcome back to All About Winning Daily Fantasy Sports. My name is Ty Patton. The divisional round of the NFL playoffs is upon us, and to kick things off is an NFC clash between the Minnesota Vikings off their upset win over the New Orleans Saints, who visit the NFC's number one seed and NFC West champion San Francisco 49ers. The 49ers have been installed as a 7-point favorite with an over-under sitting at 44.5 points. This game kicks off Saturday at 4:35 p.m. Draftkings has a showdown contest for each game, and in this video I will share my research and strategy utilizing the numbers that are fantasy relevant to building showdown lineups. I have personally never won a showdown contest, however I believe in my overall process and know that I will. I can honestly say that I cash, meaning I at least win my entry money back, at least 80 to 90%. Now, before we unpack this game, I want to share the numbers that are fantasy relevant to the Showdown contest itself. There were 125 Showdown contests throughout the 2019 NFL season. This includes the 4 playoff games last weekend during the wild card weekend. These Showdown contests have an average winning score of 131.58, with an average winning captain score of 42.72. Since the average captain score represents 32% of the average winning score, I focus a lot of attention to the captain's position. With this being said, the captain's position breaks down as follows through these 125 contests. The underdog running back has been the captain in the winning lineup more than any other position, 25 times for 20%. The favored quarterback, 22 times for 18%. The favored wide receiver has been the captain in the winning lineup 21 times for 17%. The favored running back has been the captain in the winning lineup 16 times for 13%. The underdog wide receiver has been the captain in the winning lineup 16 times for 13%. And the underdog quarterback has been the captain in the winning lineup 10 times for 8%. The favored defensive special teams has been the captain in the winning lineup 6 times for 5%. The underdog tight end 3 times for 2%. The underdog kicker has been the captain in the winning lineup 2 times for 2%. The favorite tight end has been the captain in the winning lineup 2 times for 2%. And the underdog defensive special teams has been the captain in the winning lineup 2 times for 2%. Now, I also combine this by positions, whether it was they were favored or the underdog, and it breaks down as follows. Running backs have been the captain in the winning lineup more than any other position, 41 times for 33%. Wide receivers, 37 times for 30%. Quarterbacks, 32 times for 26%. All others represent 15 winning captains for 12%. Another statistic that I look at is the overall straight up one loss record of the captain in the winning lineup. The captain in the winning lineup, their teams straight up have one loss record of 89 wins and 36 losses, which is a 71% win percentage. And I broke that down by position as well, and it breaks down as follows. Running backs, 32 wins and 9 losses for a 78% win percentage. Wide receivers, 23 wins and 14 losses for a 62% win percentage. And quarterbacks, 23 wins and 9 losses for a 72% win percentage. Now, something a little bit different than my previous showdown videos is I also did the numbers for playoffs. Those numbers were all inclusive, meaning the regular season and the NFL playoffs. This is just from the playoffs last week, and then I'll update it this week as we move forward. In the playoffs, the underdog running back was the captain in the winning lineup 2 out of the 4 games for 50%. The underdog wide receiver was the captain in the winning lineup 1 time for 25%, and the underdog quarterback was the captain in the winning lineup 1 time for 25%. And that makes a lot of sense because 3 of the 4 underdogs won the game straight up last week. The average winning score for the playoff games last weekend was 115.98. And the average winning captain score was 44.16. And the captains, as I mentioned, were 3 wins and 1 loss, which is a 75% win percentage, which is close to what the overall win percentage is for the season for 125 showdown contests of 71%. Running backs were 2 wins and one and no losses straight up for 100%. Wide receivers were 1 win and no loss for 100%, and quarterbacks were 0-1. That was Josh Allen for 0%. In comparison, these numbers tell us the 125 showdown contests, including 4 playoff games, in comparison to the 4 playoff games. It breaks down as follows. I'm going to compare the numbers. The winning score for the 125 showdown contest is 131.58. For the 4 playoff games, it was 115.98. So for the 125 showdown through the regular season, it was 15.6 points greater. The winning captain score for the 125 showdown slates was 42.72. For the 4 playoff games, it was 44.16, which is a difference of 1.44 points in favor of the playoff games. The captain's percentage was, the captain's, what is this here? Sorry about that. The underdog, okay. The top position, underdog running back for the 125 showdown slates was 20%, and the underdog running back was the winning captain for the 4 playoff games for 50%. So that's kind of telling. And as I mentioned already, the 1-loss percentage for the winning captain for their teams was, for the 125 showdown through the regular season, 71%, which is 89 wins and 36 losses. And for the 4 playoff games, it was 3 wins, 1 loss for 75%. So those numbers are really telling, and they're kind of close. I thought that was pretty interesting to compare. And it's only a small sample, the 4 playoff games, but we'll add the 4 from this week and look at them next weekend when we look at the 2 conference championship games. Now, do these numbers unlock the mystery for the winning lineup of the 49ers Vikings game? Absolutely not. But they do give us some numbers that we can use in our overall process to give us an edge, which in the end, that's all we're looking for, is an edge. Some of the main takeaways, obviously, the underdog running back appears in the captain's position more than any other position 20% of the time. The 1-loss record of the winning captain is 71%. 75% in the playoffs. So that tells you that the captain comes from the winning team 71% of the time. And these are just some numbers that you can use in your overall process. Now, my overall process involves, when I look at a showdown slate, the first thing I do is I take a stand. Who do I think is going to win the game? How are they going to win the game? What are the matchups? What is the path to victory? Who are the players that support this path to victory? Is it the running game, the passing game? And then I factor in a couple players from the other team. If they're going to be playing from behind, how are they going to be competitive in this game? Or if this game is going to be close, how are they going to keep it close? And all those players, I identify between 4 and 6 players that I think have a path to being the highest scoring players in the game. And I use that group as my captains. I at least want 2 from each team. And then after I've identified my captains, I build my lineups around my captains by using correlation. I do things like, if I have a quarterback in the captain spot, I like to use 2 targets in the flex. The only quarterback that I don't necessarily feel that I have to do that with is Lamar Jackson, because he's a quarterback and a running back combination. I'd still like to add at least 1 target with him, but I don't feel like I have to. If I have a wide receiver in the captain's position, I like to use his quarterback in the flex position. I try to only use 1 of the 4 between the 2 defensive special teams and 2 field goal kickers. Those are just some of the things that I do. And then I just use correlation, and that's how I build my showdown lineups. Now, utilizing those numbers, And the way that I think this game is going to go, first off, I think that this game is a difficult game for Minnesota to win on the road. They went on the road in New Orleans, back to Minnesota, now out to San Francisco. They did win the game last week as an underdog. There are some numbers behind that are fairly interesting as well. But San Francisco at home, playoff game, number one seed. They have a really good defense. Minnesota's going to have a difficult time throwing the ball. Um, San Francisco I feel like they're going to be able to throw the ball on Minnesota. Minnesota's stingy versus the run as well. So it's going to be difficult for them to run the ball on them. But I think this will come down to I think Jimmy Garoppolo will have a lot to do with this game. Now, I did find a number that quarterbacks in their first playoff game, dating back to 2010, they have a one-loss record of 9 wins and 17 losses. So that's something to consider, but there were still 9 quarterbacks that won. It's not like it's 0 for 40 or something. But I feel like home playoff teams, especially as you move through the playoffs. Last year, every playoff team that won in the first round, and I believe it was a similar situation where 3 of the 4 road teams won. Every playoff team that won in the first round lost in the second round. Obviously, they're all playing a team that was on a bye. Now, that doesn't mean that'll go that way this year, but I do think that San Francisco will be difficult for Minnesota to run the ball on. Their defense is healthy with D Ford returning. Um, Adam Thielen has a little bit of an ankle injury, so keep an eye on that. He got cleated in practice the other day. He's got stitches in his ankle. But that defense, with Richard Sherman back there, Richard Sherman and the other cornerback have only allowed 7 touchdown passes this year, and Sherman only allowed 1 of those. So I think this is a really difficult matchup Cousins did get it done on the road in New Orleans, but New Orleans pass defense is not the San Francisco pass defense, and I think that's the big difference in this game because San Francisco knows that they're going to have to stop Dalvin Cook. Minnesota will probably try to get him involved in the passing game a little bit out of the backfield, and he'll get his touches. But if San Francisco is able to shut him down or limit the damage done by him, then I think that putting it on Kirk Cousins is going to put him in a difficult task. 49ers, obviously, with a win, would host the NFC championship game next week. And I just believe that San Francisco will get it done. So I'm going to build my lineup around the fact that I think that Minnesota where San Francisco will beat Minnesota at home. So this is the lineup that I worked on. I had George Kittle and the captain. I went down, and I'm going to talk about this a little bit when I get it done. I had Coleman as one of my flex. I had Garoppolo as a flex. I had the kicker, Gold. I did have Dalvin Cook. And I also had tight end Rudolph. Left 900 on the table, and that's a good thing for a Showdown contest. Now, one thing about Kittle, he's going to get a ton of volume from Garoppolo. Minnesota is very stingy versus the tight end position. They don't give up a whole lot to the tight ends. But I still think on volume alone that Garoppolo is going to target him a lot. And I think he'll get his. He's been the winning captain in the Showdown contest early in the season. There's only been 2 or there's been 3 favorite defensive or tight ends that were the captain, and he was one of them one week. And he's a big part of this offense. Now, I do have Coleman here. I think they'll get Coleman going because Minnesota's very stingy versus the run. So I think they'll have a little bit of success in shutting down Mostert. But I think Coleman will get involved, and they'll be able to get him going, targeting him out of the backfield. So I have Garoppolo with Coleman and Kittle. I like to use the kicker from the team that has the highest implied total. The highest implied total means the team that's favored to win. It just makes sense. The implied total means they're going to score more points, obviously, if they're favored to win. So I go with the usually with the favorite kicker, and I really like kickers that are home. For Minnesota, Dalvin Cook, this offense goes as Dalvin Cook goes, and he won't be phased out of the game. Even if they get behind, they'll just target him out of the backfield. He gets a big percentage of the carries. He looked really good in, last week coming in off his injuries after a couple weeks off. And I also have Rudolph here. He got a nice target share last week, won the game with the winning catch in overtime. And if San Francisco's getting a lot of pressure on Cousins, it makes sense that he might be dropping the ball off to Cook or Rudolph, who doesn't run as deep of routes. So that left 900 on the table, and in Showdown contest, that's a good thing. The average winning Showdown contest winning lineup has left just over $1,000 on the table, and so I really like this lineup. And I'll play this in different contests, some head-to-head, double up, 50-50, some large GPPs, and then I'll move this around, and I'm going to show you here in a second the way I use an optimizer. But this is a lineup that I like, and I'm going to show you guys one more. And this is, again, built around San Francisco winning the game. I had Jimmy Garoppolo at quarterback. I had kicker Robbie Gould. I had George Kittle. I had Deebo Samuel. I really like Samuel. It's a really good matchup. He's probably going to draw Xavier Rhodes in coverage, and Rhodes has not been good at all this year. And I have Dalvin Cook. That left me 1,400, and I went down here to Irv Smith. Smith gets about 3 targets per game, so not maybe looking. Obviously, if he gets a touchdown or something, he would definitely hit value, but it doesn't take much to get value at 1,400. So the only thing about this lineup is I don't know how contrarian it would be. I spent all the money, didn't leave any on the table. I got Garoppolo with 2 targets with Dalvin Cook. That'll probably be a popular type lineup build, but I like this lineup as well. So as I always do, I utilize an optimizer. And the main reason I use an optimizer is I want to see the different randomizations of the players that I like. I don't MME, meaning mass multi-entry, 150 lineups or anything like that. I don't have anything against anybody that does that. It makes sense. If I'm ever in the position to do that, I'm most certainly going to do it. If this is your job and this is what you do, then it makes sense to do that if you're into DFS like that. I'm just not in the position. But what I want to do with my optimizers, I want to see the different randomizations of the players that I like. So what I do is I set my optimizer for 150 lineups. On Showdown, I use very few rules because I want to see a true randomization. Rules affect the outcome of the optimizer. On a main slate, I do use a few rules, and I want certain players matched up or stacked with other players. But in Showdown, I don't do that. I will set it, as I mentioned, if I have a quarterback in the captain spot, I at least want 2 targets in the flex. I mean, in wide receiver, tight end, sometimes running back. If I have a wide receiver in the captain, I at least want his quarterback in the flex. There's only one way that wide receiver goes off, and that's if the quarterback throws him the ball. and as I mentioned, I try to use only one of the four between the two defensive special teams and the two field goal kickers. Field goal kickers offer the safer floor, um, and I generally try to use the field goal kicker from the team that's favored because they have the higher implied total, more points. It just makes sense to use the field goal kicker whose team's going to score more points. I try to only use one. I'll use two at the most. Sometimes I'll get a field goal kicker with a defense. And I'm not against using the defense against my captain. You know, sometimes correlation will go like if you got your quarterback and the captain and you're using a defense in the flex, say the defense scores a defensive touchdown. Well, now the quarterback is in a different type of game script, playing from behind. Say that team had went down and scored, and then your captain gets the ball and he throws a pick six. Now he's down 2 scores, so the game script changes for this quarterback to do more. So those correlate well with each other. It's not always just running back with defense. You know, defense against a player that you have in a captain, that to me is a good correlation sometimes. So I set my, as I said, my optimizer for 150 lineups. I set the minimum maximum exposures as I described earlier. I picked between 4 and 6 captains. I set the minimum maximum exposure. Some a little different, like I had Cousins as one of the potential captains. I set his exposure at 5 to 10%. I set George Kittle's at 20 to 25%. So that's the percentage of 150 lineups. And then I go down and I set all the minimum maximum exposures for my flex positions too. Now, like the guys on the way at the bottom, I might set their exposure to no more than 2%. And then I let the optimizer go. Very rarely does it give me 150 lineups with the minimum maximum exposures that I have and a couple little rules. It's not able to generate the full 150. There's been a couple times it did, and either I hit 150 on the dot or there was way more than 150 that could be generated. You never know. But and then tonight's in particular, it gave me 139 out of the 150 requested for this particular game. So, as I always do, I show you guys what the optimizer generated. I show you a couple lineups and utilizing my captains and minimum maximum exposures. The first one, it was really interesting because I don't use all the percentage of my captains. I had 6 in particular for this game, and I used up 95%, so there was 5% left. And in that 5%, one of them was they had the 49ers. No, I'm sorry. It had the Vikings in the captain spot. The next player in the flex was Dalvin Cook. It had Kirk Cousins, Jimmy G, Robbie Gould, and George Kittle. Left 300 on the table. Obviously, the optimizer took the Vikings at a real low captain at 5,100. Doesn't take much for them to get value, and it allowed you to get a whole lot of the good players in the flex positions. And I'll probably play. Now, I will play like the 20 entry $1 or the 20 entry quarters. I will play those. And when I have generated these lineups, I just go through and pick the ones that I like and put them in there. One thing that I quit doing was I look at this and say, oh, well, I wonder if I move this player. I either use the generated lineup or I just pick another one. I've burned myself by trying to adjust it myself. So this was one that was generated this was the first one generated by the optimizer. Now, I'll show you guys one more. that was generated by the optimizer. And it had Kittle in the captain, Jimmy G. It had Raheem Mostert. It had Dalvin Cook. It had Irv Smith. And it had Robbie Gould. And this one left 300 as well, 49,700. And this is pretty interesting. I like it. You got a little bit of both pieces of the, you got some of the passing of the San Francisco 49ers offense, a little bit of the run game. You got the run game from Minnesota. Obviously, they're going to lean on Dalvin Cook. You got the kicker from San Fran. So that makes sense. And you never know. Showdown, just the weirdest lineups and the weirdest things can happen. And so this was the a lineup that was generated by the optimizer. So I want to thank you guys for joining me. I encourage you to please drop any opinions or comments that you may have below. Please share this video, like it, subscribe if you're not already a subscriber, and hit that notification bell so you get notified when my next video posts. I've mentioned it in all my previous videos, the last few. Last week we went over 100 subscribers, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it's a lot to me because it exceeded my expectations this year, and that's all because of you guys. And I really appreciate you following me and giving me a chance. And if you're not a subscriber, go ahead and subscribe. It doesn't cost anything, and I got some really good information that I'd like to share, and you don't lose anything by giving me a chance. So thanks to you guys again that have followed me and been loyal followers. I will be having a showdown video for all the playoff games this weekend. This is obviously the first one. Tomorrow morning I'll be posting the Baltimore, Tennessee showdown video for tomorrow night, and then tomorrow afternoon sometime I'll post the videos for the Sunday games, the Houston at Kansas City and the Seattle at Green Bay. And then next weekend I'll do the two-game slate, the conference championships, and then the two showdown videos as well. You can also follow me on Twitter at winningabout. Don't forget the injury reports. This game kicks off at 4:30, so the injury report will come out about between 3:05 and 3:15. Even if a player doesn't have an injury designation, you always want to check that. You don't want to zero in any type of contest, whether it be main slate or showdown. But showdown, you've only got 6 players, and starting out with a 0 is bad news. So always check that. You still got a questionable tag here on Thielen. Looks like Diggs is over his flu that he had. And it doesn't look like, but just in case somebody gets a stomach virus or something, you always want to check that. So between 3:05 and 3:15 tomorrow, the injury report will post. Again, thank you guys for joining me. I'll see you again real soon. My name is Ty Patton. This is all about winning daily fantasy sports. Have a good evening.